Okay, so I just finished watching Monkey Man, directed by Dev Patel. I believe this is his first time directing. I'm not 100% sure, don't quote me on that. I'm going to try not to get into too many spoilers. Obviously, it's a new movie, just came out today, or tomorrow if you go, or yesterday if you went to the midnight release that they do. Um, but overall, I thought it was good. Um, I'll just quickly run through my notes here. I really liked the opening title card. The way it faded in as he was walking down a hallway was really, really cool. It had great camera work all the way through. The fights I thought were well done. There's a couple spots where I was like, oh, but I had some interesting camera shots. There's one point where it was an interesting kind of POV shot, very reminiscent of almost like a video game cutscene, where someone then gets punched in the face in the point of view. It punches them out of the point of view as it cuts. That was just something that I noticed. There's also a ton of really, really good use of windows and mirrors and reflections. There's a ton of really, really cool mirror shots that kind of run throughout the entire film, which I really liked. Let's see here. Yeah, again, super interesting shot composition. It had a strong score, but nothing stood out about the score to me, which I guess is really what a score should do. You don't want something that like you actively think about. One of the only there's maybe some weird editing things that came up that I think kind of affected the story. I thought that, okay, this isn't really a spoiler, but there's kind of two villains to the film. There's the big villain, and then his villainy henchman guy that's like kind of the main, more antagonistic villain. But the big villain, I feel like wasn't fleshed out enough. You kind of hear about him here and there, but I didn't feel to like, oh, this guy's a really bad guy. You hear about some of the terrible things that he's done, and he's the one responsible for ordering around all the other people, and obviously he's owning the whole kind of crime organization. But I found him a little weak compared to the kind of henchman guy that you're supposed to hate, who was like, you really hate him. There's also kind of this little side friend character that I actually really liked, but I think he must have just been cut in the editing for the end, because they build this whole relationship, or not build this whole relationship, but they start to kind of build a relationship, and then there's a point where he just kind of vanishes, and he pops up once, maybe twice more, and I was like, oh, that didn't really feel super resolved. But I think that might have been just an editing thing. Not that it takes away from the movie in any way, I just thought now, in retrospect, that I've been thinking about it, oh yeah, that didn't make a ton of sense. But overall, the cinematography blew me away. I thought Dev Patel did a great job as the main actor. This is another kind of more nitpicky thing, but it's called The Monkey Man, and he doesn't really wear the monkey mask all that often. I thought there's a moment where you get into the big climax, and he just kind of takes the mask off. And I get actors want to have their face in the movie, things like that, and he's directing, so he can really do whatever he wants. But it was just one of those things where I was like, oh, that was weird. But it didn't really matter in the end. It doesn't really take away from anything. It doesn't really matter. I would say, though, this movie, I want to say 7, 8 out of 10, 7.5. I feel like 7.5 is good. Technically, it's a great movie, I think. Score was solid, cinematography was solid, editing was solid. But yeah, I think the story was cut in a way that you lost some things where you kind of feel they are a little unresolved. But that might just be me, and I've been spending way too much time in an editing theater just working on short films for school. So all those little tiny details just for whatever reason really stood out to me. I think if I wasn't so ingrained in editing the last week or so, that they wouldn't have stood out as much. But I also am happy I went. I went alone. Maybe it's weird. I don't know. I enjoyed myself. And I'm happy I went. But yeah, I'd say go see this movie. There's no one really in theaters when I was there. I think there's maybe a dozen people. But I hope it does well. And yeah.